My home dimension is very different to your own. You have electricity here to light your streets and houses at night. You have phones and computers to help you communicate over long distances. You have trains and planes to travel. In the world I come from, the same is accomplished by magic. Need your room lit at night? There's a spell for that. Need to travel to or talk to somebody on the other side of the world? There's a spell for that. There's a spell for everything. As a child, I didn't have to do any magic. My parents would cast all the spells I needed. At the age of 5, I went to what here would be called kindergarten. There, I learned my first spells. I found out I was super good at magic. I can still remember how every year at the Day of the Shadow, we children would perform a little dance while casting spells that would create colorful sparks and lights around us like little fireworks. We would dance and sing, "It is the living shadow that gives us the light." I didn't know back then who this living shadow was, and neither did the other kids. My sparks were always the brightest and most colorful of all the children. The other kids were then always jealous of me. When I went to school, I stared learning more grown-up magic, like lighting a room, sending a long-distance message, and so on. I excelled at this too. It was here at school I would find out more about this living shadow. It was presented to us as a superstition, something people in the past used to believe. There wasn't just one living shadow. There was supposed to be a whole race of them, but only one had ever interacted with humanity. It was believed that this being had taught our distant ancestors magic. We were now a much more advanced society and didn't believe such nonsense. Magic was, of course, just how the world works, what you people over here would call a law of nature. Because I was so good at magic, I got sent to the High Magical Academy. This would be kind of like an university, in that it is an institution of higher learning, but infinitely more secretive. In fact, before enrollment, you were required to cast a spell on yourself that would bring instant death if you ever spoke of the High Magical Academy, and especially about the graduation ceremony to outsiders. The same spell would be cast again by the faculty on the students, just in case one of them botched the spell. Overkill, if you ask me. Pardon the pun. Anyway, let me tell you about my time at the High Magical Academy and the graduation ceremony. Don't worry, I won't die. It'll soon be clear why. I learnt here that the living shadow and his fellow shadows were indeed real and the source of all magic. In fact, it will personally be attending our graduation ceremony. What really puzzled me was when we were told that only half of us will be graduating. I mean, why half? The day-to-day of the High Magical Academy wasn't very much different from that of school. We learnt spells, a few completely new and complicated ones, but mostly how to combine spells in creative ways in order to solve real-world problems, and also how to design totally novel spells. However, slowly but surely, what can only be described as prayers and hymns to the living shadow were introduced, which were required for the more complex and demanding of spells. I was, again, the best among my peers. Not to brag, but I was quite popular with the ladies too. In the 3rd semester, I met Shukadima. At first we were study buddies, but soon we became romantically involved. She was a beautiful young woman and wickedly smart. She was the 2nd best student in our class after me, which kind of made her feel humiliated. But I'm sure she wouldn't have even looked at me, were it not the case. As graduation neared, we were told, we would be required to make some sort of sacrifice at the graduation ceremony. Anybody who was unable to make the sacrifice wouldn't be able to graduate. Not a human sacrifice, I hope, I said to Shukadima on our way to dorm, laughing at the absurdity of my own thought. She laughed too. Graduation day. Turns out that's exactly what they meant, a human sacrifice. The ceremony took place in a small, damp, poorly lit room, akin to a dungeon. Us, graduates, had been waiting for almost an hour before anything happened. We were getting impatient. Suddenly, the room gets even dimmer. In the middle of the room, some creature appeared. The name Living Shadow is quite descriptive. It looks like a very dark shadow, but cast on thin air and with nothing to cast it. That is the best way I can describe it. Only its eyes and mouth are pure darkness. It spoke with such a deep and powerful voice, My eyes were literally vibrating. Such a strange feeling. "Kill her!" boomed the voice of the creature, pointing at a random girl but looking straight at me. I guess, being top of my class, it started with me. The girl didn't look disturbed at all. On the contrary, she knelt before me and presented her neck to be slit. A dagger appears out of thin air in my hand. I just stood there, looking at the girl, then the dagger, back at the girl. I just couldn't do it. I wasn't a killer. Everything I had experienced until then had taught me to value all life. The creature grew impatient. "Kill them both." It pointed at me too now. The dagger was no longer in my hand. It had appeared in Shukadima's hand. I saw deep hatred and disgust for me in her eyes. She went to kill the poor girl first, whom I had refused to kill earlier. She wanted me to see the other girl die before she would slaughter me too. I couldn't let her do that. There wasn't any time to reason with her, so I did the only thing I could think of. I stepped between them and shoved my girlfriend away so she fell to the floor. A sharp pain. She had managed to stab me in the shoulder. "This one's touched by the light! Kill all 3 of them! Quickly!" roared the creature, pointing with one finger to me. However, its finger detached and started floating towards me, disintegrating. It shrieked in pain and surprise and fled to the other side of the room, where it opened a portal, through which it fled. This is when I noticed I was bleeding heavier than before. The dagger, that had been stuck in my shoulder, being of pure magic, also disintegrated. My former classmates started attacking me with their magical weapons, but as soon as they approached me, their weapons vanished. As soon as they realized this and decided to beat me to death with their bare hands, a bubble of absolute darkness appeared around me. Remember, all light not coming from the sun was magical in nature, and now I was somehow canceling all magic in my immediate vicinity. As you can imagine, I was positively terrified. Not only was my girlfriend trying to kill me now, my classmates were trying to kill me too. But also I became a black hole that sucked up all magic, which I was brought up to believe was all that is good and proper in life. What was happening to me? How is this even possible? Not to mention I was heavily bleeding. I was sure I was done for. Then I remembered what the creature said, that I was touched by the light. I had to survive and find out more about this light. They started hitting at random in the darkness, but would more often than not hit each other. I would lie, however, if I said I didn't get quite a few blows to the ribs and stomach and even one to the head. I did, however, manage to get outside, mostly thanks to the confusion, but I like to think also due to sheer will and determination. The bubble around me, where magic doesn't work, had been growing continuously ever since that day. I was living by myself in the woods because everything magical around me stopped working and everybody was angry with me. So even in the woods, I couldn't stay in one place. I had to always be on the move. Armed people would come looking for me, armed not with magical, but with physical weapons. One day, the shadow creature showed its ugly face again. It tried to attack me with energy beams and other magical weapons, but nothing worked. Then it opened a portal to another world at a certain distance, then hurled the portal at me, trying to send me through it. But as the portal approached me, it shrank continuously until nothing remained of it. The creature fled again in frustration. Eventually, the no-magic bubble around me grew larger than the forest and enveloped the towns surrounding it. The townsfolk came looking for me armed with sticks and stones. One of the many parties looking for me was about to find and kill me when something very unexpected happened. A giant portal opened kilometers above the forest and started descending. Horizon to horizon, one single portal. The shadow creature had brought its shadowkin with, and together they opened this enormous portal. As it descended, however, it shrank. As it reached me, it was barely wide enough to fit me, but I managed to squeeze through. I was overjoyed to find out there was no such thing as magic in the world I had landed. Earth. I've been living here now a while and now feel comfortable enough to tell you fine folks my story.